Okay, it looks like we're ready to start now. For a second, the agenda wasn't showing up online, and we wanted to make sure that everyone had access to the agenda before we started. But just to begin, thanks for joining us for the Oklahoma City Board of Adjustment teleconference meeting. While I think we would all prefer an in-person meeting under normal circumstances, I commend the city staff and my fellow board members for doing what it takes to ensure that the business of the city can continue and that all of your matters can still be heard. We have a few announcements to make regarding this teleconference meeting. If the teleconference is disconnected at any time during the meeting will be stopped and reconvened once the audio connection is restored. If communications are unable to be restored within 30 minutes, items remaining for consideration will be continued to the next regularly scheduled meeting, which will be April 16th, 2020 at 1:30, and that will most likely also be by teleconference. The agenda and documents are located at okc.gov. For applicants addressing documents and exhibits in the applications, please be specific so that board members and the public can follow along with your references. For anyone wishing to speak about an agenda item or to speak under citizens to be heard, hopefully you have previously notified staff by phone or email, and I will call on you to speak at the appropriate time if you have already contacted staff. We will call the case, and then I will recognize the applicant to speak. Then I'll recognize any protestants, and then we will close with the applicant giving any final remarks. The board will deliberate, ask any questions, and then the board will take a vote. If you call in after your item has been heard, you'll be allowed to speak under citizens to be heard. And we request that you limit any comments to 3 minutes. When you call in, staff will mute your phone, so all of your phones should be muted right now. I ask that all participants, except for board members, keep their phones on mute until they are recognized to speak. To unmute your phone, press *6, as Ms. Lincoln previously instructed. Board members will be allowed to ask questions and make any comments at any time during the meeting. We just ask that all board members identify themselves before they start speaking so that the record is clear. Remember that only one person can be heard at a time. If more than one person is speaking at a time, the system will mute one speaker automatically. So we will only be able to hear one person and not multiple people. Again, before you start speaking, identify yourself for the purposes of the record. There will be a roll call every 15 minutes. All votes will be by roll call made by the municipal councilor. I'm reminding staff now to make sure that this meeting is being recorded. And now I will call this meeting to order, and can the clerk take the first roll call? Cindy, are you there?
Yes.
Could you just get us started with that roll call, please?
We have Mike Privet.
I'm here.
Mike Voorhees.
Here.
Monica Ybarra.
I'm here.
Samuel Merchant.
I'm here. Okay. The first item on the agenda is to receive the minutes from the March 19th, 2020 meeting. If there are any changes, board members certainly advise if there are any changes. If not, we'll take a motion and a second and make sure that you identify yourself for your motion and your second.
This is Mike.
All right.
This is Mike.
Okay, so it looks like we have a motion from Mr. Privet and a second from Ms. Ybarra. If Ms. McDevitt could take a voice vote, please.
Sure. Sam Merchant.
Aye.
Kitty Asbury. Mike Privet.
Aye.
Mike Voorhees.
Aye.
Monica Ibarra. Aye.
And the minutes are approved. The next item on the agenda is continuance requests or withdrawals. Cindy, if you could, well, actually, I think JJ's doing these. JJ, if you could read any continuance requests or withdrawals, please.
Okay, we have 3 continuance requests today. The first is item 11, case 14-729, defer to May 7th. Item 12, case 14-695, defer to April 16th. And item 13, 14-738, defer to May 7th.
If there are any applicants on the line that would like to request a continuance, I'll wait for about 10 seconds to have that application or that motion for continuance heard. Press *6 and let us know if you'd like to continue your application. Hearing none, do we have a motion and a second to continue the applications as requested?
This is Monica Ibarra. I move that we continue case 1429, 14695, and 14738 as requested.
Second.
All right. JJ, was that all of the requests? I thought that was...
That's all.
Monica, I thought that
That's
you
all.
moved for 2 items instead of 3.
No, I called out 3.
Okay, gotcha. So I have a motion and a second to continue items number 11, 12, and 13 as requested. If Ms. McDevitt could take a vote, please.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
And Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And those items are continued. JJ, if you could call the next item, please.
So the first item is the consent docket, and it consists of item 1, which is case number 14730 through 33, and that's for a variance to a platted front building line at 9945, 9949, and 10012 Southwest 21st Street, and 9932 Southwest 22nd Street. Case 2 is 14736, special exception of Sunbeam Family Services for a child care center at 2601 South Tulsa. Item 3, case 14721, request of Malcolm Hall for a variance to a platted front building line at 908 Northwest 14th Street.
Okay. Items on the consent docket can be voted on as a group for approval without presentation to the board unless there's a protest or someone wants to speak on a matter. Is anyone on the line that would like to speak on a matter? Generally, this would be for protestants only. But is there anyone that would like to speak on any of these 3 matters?
This is
Hearing
Andrew
none.
Norton.
Oh, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, but this is Andrew Norton. I'm calling in regards to number 2, case number 14736, as Sunbeam Family Services, or representing Sunbeam Family Services, and we're working in the process of just transitioning it into child care center from the Oklahoma City Public Schools.
Okay. Is there anyone on the line that protests application in item number 2, case number 14736? Okay. Hearing no protests. Board members, I'll take a motion to approve the items on the consent docket.
Mike Privet, motion to approve consent docket.
Mike Voorhees, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the items on the consent docket, items number 1, 2, and 3. Cast your votes, please, with Ms. McDevitt calling the roll.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And the items are approved. Moving on to items requiring separate vote. JJ, if you could get us started on that.
Okay. First item is number 4, case 14722. Request for variance to the condition for a mobile home to have a minimum of 5 acres in the R1 district located at 4219 Beaver Avenue.
Is the applicant on the line?
No, the applicant. I'm not an applicant, but I would like to speak in opposition too.
Okay. I will note that. We'll give the applicant an opportunity first to present the application if there's anyone on the line, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you.
No problem.
Are you here? Are you here?
Yes. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, we are the applicant.
Okay. If you want to go ahead and present your application.
It's
I should have said first if you could identify yourself first by your name and your address, and then present your application.
We are the family Rodriguez. My husband is Juan Antonio Rodriguez. The address is 4219 Beaver Avenue in Spencer, Oklahoma. That's the place we want to put the mobile home. We want to put the mobile home because, we have the joint family with with the economy is not so much good, but we try to build our the own in the future. Well, for this time, we wanna to stay the most possible for. In the future, we build the house, but right now we have the mobile home. That's the reason we want to stay.
So it sounds like you're envisioning this as just being temporary. Is that correct?
Yes.
How long are you thinking you would have a mobile home at this location?
We're not really sure about the time, because we have the young family, but it's a big. We have the 5 kids that are younger, but we think it's just 4 or 5 years only.
Okay. Board members, any questions?
For me to get on board with this, I'm going to need, some kind of solid number on a temporary approval.
This is Mike Voorhees. I'd like to hear from any of the protesters that are here. Like we got one letter and a couple of people that signed up to speak.
Yes, and I think a couple of gentlemen spoke at the last meeting as well, just in case,
Right.
so that they get their comments on the record. And they may or may not be the same person or people that have called in today, but we'll definitely hear from some of the protesters. I don't have anyone signed up to speak on this matter.
Must be.
Yeah, but I know that there's someone on the line that wanted to speak in protest.
Okay.
So I guess whoever it was that chimed in first, if you wanted to unmute yourself and present your protest, we'll hear that now.
Thank you. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, my name is Ronnie Childs. I spoke at the last meeting, and got home, my wife asked me what I spoke about, and I told her, and she said, well, you forgot the life story of what Green Pastures is all about. But I live at 4011 North Skyline Avenue in Green Pastures Edition of Oklahoma City, Spencer Mailing. I'm a 78-year-old, 100% disabled vet who has lived in the Green Pastures community for 72 of those years. You could say I know where all the bodies are buried in Green Pastures. By the way, in 1968, my wife Carol, for 42 years, and I lived in a red house on the same plot of land that is in question today. My aunt and uncle raised me across the street on a 5-acre tract. The history of Green Pastures was named and platted by Buren B. Day in 1948. He sold plats of lands to predominantly African-American families. In those days, people grew and raised their own food. There was no electricity. Water was drawn from a well, and the restroom was an outhouse. Light was provided by cold oil lanterns at night. In 1953, Green Pastures Progressive Club was organized and started planning for growth and development of the Black American community. The business district, in fact, was established immediately around the corner from the plot of land we're discussing. In 1954, Green Pastures Grade School, Northeast 43rd and Post Road, was opened, and County Commissioner Ralph Adair, working with the Progressive Club, made that happen. In 1957, Green Pastures was annexed by the city of Oklahoma City. In 1959, black students from Green Pastures were bused to integrate Star Spencer High School in Spencer proper. In 1964, Green Pastures branch application for the admission to the NAACP was accepted. In 1969, June 4th, Green Pastures Progressive Club received certification of incorporation from the Secretary of State John Rogers, state of Oklahoma. E. Melvin Porter filed the papers for cost of $2. I currently serve as the president of the Green Pastures Progressive Club proudly. In 1966, I was recruited by Clara Lupa to join her sit-in demonstration at Katz Drugstore and John A. Brown stores in Oklahoma City. Over the years, I have personally witnessed and experienced damages and injuries mobile home movement and debris from high winds has caused in people's homes and lives and livestock in Green Pastures. This is the absolute reason less than 5 acres mobile home restrictions was instituted. Because of the fact I know them to be strong, I strongly express my opposition to the variance request in question on the grounds of safety in the Green Pastures community. Thank you much. I'll take questions if there are any.
Sir, would you oppose their request for a temporary mobile home use?
I would, and I refer back to the gentleman that said he needed something more firm in terms of time. But time, as far as strong winds, it could be a year. We could have a strong windstorm, and the same thing could happen. The mobile home could be uprooted. So in that respect, it's very questionable for me.
Well, I'm also concerned with the applicant not meeting the statutory requirements. So that's one of my concerns, and that's another one also.
Okay, board members, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you, sir. Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on this matter? Anyone who wanted to speak in protest on this matter? Okay. If the applicant wanted to get back on the line and address any of the concerns of the protest, we would hear you now.
This is Luis Ayala. I'm a friend to this family, and I can say a little bit about them. So I'm not them for about 6 years, and I do understand what the gentleman was talking about. But this family, it probably, if something can happen about disaster, it's one thing, but they're a good family. They are a very respectful family. So if someone are worried about that, so you don't have to worry about is a very good family. So very, very, very responsible and very respectful people.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Board members, any questions or comments?
This is Monica Ybarra, and I will say that, Mr. Charles, I respect the safety concerns that you have. I just had a question because some of the comments that were provided for us said that there was other mobile homes in the general vicinity of the Green Pasture Addition. And so I guess your safety concerns to me would apply no matter where mobile homes are, and so using that logic, we wouldn't have any mobile homes anywhere ever. And so I'm just curious to know how close of a vicinity are other mobile homes to the Green Pasture area? Does anyone know?
I believe he spoke on that. I think I asked that question at the last meeting, and he said that there were some, within a few miles, but there weren't any in the immediate area. And the unfavorable conditions in the staff report note that there does not appear to be mobile homes in the immediate vicinity. So I think that confirms what Mr. Childs said at the last meeting. I mean, I'll kind of voice my concerns. I kind of echo Mr. Privet's concerns. I don't know how this meets the statutory conditions for a variance. I don't know how it's a peculiar piece of property, how there's an unnecessary hardship. In the past, we've done some of these where we've granted them for maybe a year while you're constructing a house, and with the understanding that it'll be removed whenever the permanent structure is built or something like that. But here, I don't see that, and I just don't see how this hits the statutory elements. So I currently cannot support it. Board members, any other questions, comments, or a motion?
This is Mike Voorhees. I'm going to have to move we deny.
I agree, and I second that. Mike Privet.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to deny the application in case number 14722 for the reason that it does not meet statutory conditions for a variance. Through Ms. McDevitt, we will take a vote.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ybarra?
Aye.
And it's denied. And JJ, if we could call the next item.
Item 5 is case number 14633, request of Mark Davis for a variance to the standard for accessory structures in the R1 district located at 10017 Trafalgar Drive.
Excuse me, this is Mike Voorhees. I have to recuse on this, so I'm going to step out. And if you'll just let me know when we're finished and ready for case number 6, I'll step back in the room.
Okay. Is the applicant on the line? Okay, I have a protest. Someone signed up to protest this. Is the protestant on the line?
This is Mark Davis. I'm the applicant.
Oh, okay. Well, we will start out with you, Mr. Davis, if you want to just give your name and address and present your application.
Yes, it's Mark Davis. Address is 10017 South Trafalgar Drive. Trying to get a approval for our carport that we're trying to finish. We have the two sides that are enclosed, two sides that are open, and the roof on it. Basically, we're just wanting to get approval to finish what we started. We had got an original permit for a carport that was approved by the city, and we're trying to do exactly what we had asked for. We just, for some reason, got stopped after we'd already started it again. I've had an engineer come out since the first hearing we had, inspected the slab or the flooring, said it was fine for the building or structure that we put up. And like I said, we haven't done anything else since then because we've been stopped, so we haven't progressed it at all. I'm just trying to get an okay to go ahead and go forward and finish our carport the way we started. Basically, all we have left to do is pour an approach and add a breezeway. Thank you.
And Mr. Davis, can you help me understand the permitting process? I see the permit that's attached to the application is dated October 11th, 2019, and you first came before us in September of 2019. So the first time I recall, and I could be wrong, but I recall this not having a permit initially. Is that correct, or can you correct my understanding?
That is correct, sir. We first started going to build a building, and we did not have a permit. So we changed it to do a carport, and I came down to the city permit office and got a permit before we progressed anymore. So we didn't do anything after they stopped us for not having a permit. We didn't do anything else until after we got the permit and got approval for a carport. That's when we put the other side up and the roof up, obviously not knowing that I was going to get stopped again, or I wouldn't have spent that extra money to put the other side up and the roof up, which is kind of frustrating that I was approved to do it, so I spent more money and then they stopped me again.
Can anyone from city staff comment on how that happened?
This is JJ. He did come in and apply for a permit, was issued a permit, but upon further review, it was determined that the permit that was issued didn't meet two of the requirements for a carport. And he was issued a stop work order. And those were that the foundation didn't meet the building code, and the carport didn't have an architectural design and appearance with the primary building. And those are the two variances that he's asking for today.
So the size is no longer an issue, is that correct?
Correct. Now that it's a carport, the height, size requirements are different for carports and location requirements. He had a setback issue before. So the only two things with it being a carport are that it does not match the architectural design of the house and that the foundation does not meet building code.
Is it possible to change either of those?
Are you asking me, sir?
Yes.
It was kind of a question to both, but I probably should have been more specific. I believe city staff thinks it's possible to change those so that you would be in compliance, but I'll certainly hear from you, Mr. Davis, on whether those could be changed.
Well, obviously the side walls, one of the things they're asking me to do was put brick 5 foot up and then either wood siding or stucco, I believe is what they're asking for. I mean, I can do that. I don't understand the 5 foot of brick because it's a 6 foot tall stockade behind that you're not even going to see the 5 foot brick anyway from the street, or if it's sitting there next to my fence. I don't understand that part of it, but I mean, if one of the things is you tell me I need to put wood siding on it to try to make it more, I guess, appeasing to the neighborhood, then I definitely can do that. I think the other thing about the foundation, I just don't know, obviously, how much that's going to cost me to do something like that. It has steel piers in it. It has several steel piers in it at all the weight spots of the structure. So I'm hoping that that's what I'm asking for today is that you guys can, let me have it as is on the foundation, and then if I need to put siding or something up the sides, I can make that work. We don't have a lot of money, so I didn't really want to have to do that, but if that's what I need to do, I will.
And JJ, what would need to change on the foundation?
My understanding is it would need to have a footing. It's just on a slab right now with some steel piers, but it would need to have a concrete footing.
Okay. This inspection report from the engineering company, does that hold any weight? Does that, change y'all's opinion any, or is it?
I believe a building department has seen that, and they did not agree with it.
Okay.
Board members, any other questions of the applicant? Okay. Cindy, if we could mute everyone except board members. I've got Mr. Downey Jr. signed up to speak, so if Mr. Downey Jr. wants to unmute your phone by pressing *6. Okay. Is there anyone else who wanted to protest this application that is on the line? Okay. There are numerous protests in the board packet. However, I think these protests are applicable before this was converted to a carport, and whenever this was an accessory structure. So now that it's a carport, I think the main protest was just the size of this, and I don't think that's an issue before the board any longer. And so we're strictly looking at the foundation and the siding issue.
Okay, well, my deal, if we had the applicant had a PE sign off on it and the city engineer doesn't agree with it, where do we go from there?
Protester, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm directly affected by the size of this structure. The lot at 10,017 Trafalgar is 11,580 square feet, or roughly 2.7 acres. The structure in question is approximately 17 to 18 feet in height and 36 feet in length. The average side of an interstate billboard is 14 by 48. When I look to the south of my patio, so I see a structure very near the size of an interstate billboard. The only thing missing is the advertisement. At the September 25th Board of Adjustment hearing, I showed the board pictures of the structure, showing just how grossly out of proportion this structure is in relation to the neighborhood. We have building codes for a reason, and this is one of them. There is a proper way to build an accessory building, and that is to apply for a building permit to be sure the structure follows all relevant codes. At the Board of Adjustment meeting on September 25th, the property owner knew and acknowledged he should have gotten a building permit. He did not. Had he done so, case 14663 would not be on the agenda. Now I want to know how it is that someone can erect an illegal building and then come back and say, wait a minute, it's not an accessory building, it's a carport. No, gentlemen, this is a building that was erected without a building permit and should not be allowed. Therefore, I request that this variance be denied. Otherwise, you're compromising your codes by letting someone put up a structure intended to be an accessory building and then saying, uh-oh, I didn't get a permit, so now I'm going to call it a carport. This is anything but a carport. It's an unfinished accessory building. Period.
Okay, thank you, sir. Board members, any questions of the protester? Okay, Okay, thank you, sir.
I have a question for JJ, if I might. This is Monica. When the building resumed, when the construction, I should say, resumed, were the plans revised?
The applicant revised his plans and presented it to the city as a carport.
So there was
Do we have-
change. It wasn't continued construction of the same exact structure, correct?
Well, it's basically the same structure, but the carport has to be open on two ends. So basically what he did to change it to a carport was take the ends off, the east and west ends, and leave them open, and propose an attachment to the house. The carport has to be attached to the house and open on two sides.
Understood.
It's the same building, but with the ends off.
Got it. Thank you.
To me, that kind of seems a little counterproductive. I don't know. It just seems like a monstrosity. I'd have to agree with the protestant.
Yeah, I will be a bit more blunt. I think it's just a little bit too cute, and I think it's the same structure and just kind of found a savvy way to try to get it to fit within the code. And this is, I think, what the protestant was conveying. And in that regard, we still have our statutory standards, and the piece of property has to be unique and peculiar. Has to be an unnecessary hardship. It cannot be a detriment to the public good or impair the purposes and intent of the code. And I think that's what's particularly not satisfied in this case, is the public good element and also the intent of the code. I don't think that it's the intent of the code to maybe attach something that otherwise would not be permissible, and then now all of a sudden it's permissible. Even if, maybe you could have an argument that now it complies with the code. I don't think that complies with the intent of the code. And this is certainly not the minimum necessary to alleviate an unnecessary hardship. So I can't support the application, but that said, there are only 3 board members voting on this, and so any vote would need to be unanimous. So I'll say that at the outset. Board members, any comments?
I would like to say for the purposes of the record, this is Monica Ibarra again. I think one of the reasons that I can't get on board with this is, in addition to what you've said, Sam, is that if the building department still does not believe that the foundation is, there's a reason we have those, and it's safety. And, carport has the ability to, blow away, just like we were talking about before, and cause damage. And so if this is still not in line with what the building department would require, I would, for the purposes of the record, I would just like to say I think that's another concern that I have is the safety issue that still seems to be lingering.
And I will say I do, what transpired wasn't perfect, and, getting a permit and thinking that you could continue building, it's not perfect, and I certainly feel for the applicant. But at the end of the day, the entire hardship here is self-imposed by building this large structure without getting a permit at the beginning. So I kind of rest a little bit easier with that fact. But I cannot make a motion, so I don't know if anyone wanted to make a motion or has any more comments or questions.
Go ahead.
I apologize. This is Mark Davis. Am I allowed to have a response to the complaint?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Again, this is Mark Davis. Basically, a lot of the stuff that you guys are talking about, I'm not denying any of that. Obviously, that I tried to begin a building without a permit. I've already acknowledged that at the first meeting that Mr. Downey was talking about. I acknowledged it to you guys there in front of you. I'm not trying to get around anything. Basically, it just comes back to we're trying to find, a way to get our travel trailer at the house, and I'm not going to be able to park my truck in there now because we're locked up, but be able to get our travel trailer there out of the house. So we tried to compromise. That's why I went down to the city. I was there for over 4.5 hours at the permit office talking with the people there to try to make sure that what we were doing was going to be okay and legal. So that's why I went back down there to get the permit. I went down there with the intention of finding out what can we do to get this so we can, at least get it under cover at our house. And this is the stuff that we came up with. A lot of the stuff, the ideas, or not a lot of them, some of the ideas were actually people from the permit office that told me that if I attached it to the house, I would be able to put the other side on. Again, we didn't do anything else, the other side of the roof, until we got a permit. That stuff would not have even been done if I hadn't got a okay from the city with a permit. Again, we're just trying to comply with whatever we need to comply with to be able to finish it as a carport, so we can park our tractor trailer behind our fence at our yard. I know Mr. Downey doesn't like the looks of it, so I said we could put stucco or wood siding on it to make it more like a house structure, I guess you would say. Even though I will also let you know there are several buildings in our neighborhood that are made of metal, just like mine. They're not as tall as mine. Some of them aren't. There is one that is as tall as mine and actually has a roof like mine. So it's not uncommon for that to be in our neighborhood. And also, I'd like to remind everybody that I also have over 30-some sign papers from other neighbors right there around me that have absolutely no problem with the building. Thank you.
Thanks, sir. I still maintain my prior position. I'm concerned that if this gets approved, what would get approved in the future, citing this as authority or precedent. And I sympathize with your position, the applicant's position. But at the end of the day, just the powers that we're vested by the city council and by the state legislature are pretty limited, and I just don't think that this meets statutory elements for a variance. There might be another way to get this, and the city staff certainly tries to work with people, and I commend the city staff for doing everything they can to try to get people the things that they want to their pieces of property accomplished. But given the powers that we have, I think this just exceeds those powers. But I'm only one member of the board, and I also can't make a motion.
No, I agree. I'll move to deny case number 14663. This is Mike Privet.
This is Monica Ibarra, and I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second to deny the application in case number 14663 for the reasons that it does not meet statutory conditions for a variance. Ms. McDevitt, if you could call the vote, please.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And it's denied. JJ, if we could call the next case, please.
Item 6, case 14735, request of Jeffrey and Bernice Lee for a variance to the accessory building regulations at 14700 Maple Leaf Drive.
Hello?
Yes, are you the applicant?
Yes, I am. This is Jeffrey Lee, 14700 Maple Lake Drive.
Okay, if you want to go ahead and present your application.
Yes, I'm looking for a variance to put up a new garage on my property there, 14700. I submitted Homeowners Association approval, a Brent Gibson design of the building, which Brent was also the designer of the original home there, the structure there. We're going to do the same decor, kind of a mirror image of the existing property. And this is a non-commercial garage. I don't plan on doing anything other than storage there as far as no body work, no mechanical work other than minor maintenance of vehicles. So my hobby is antique cars. And obviously, I need somewhere to keep them on my property there. So I submitted also a Google Earth or an aerial photograph of the property. The garage is going to feet off of the main driveway behind a automatic gate. It's entirely fenced, and the lot that it's going on is a full-size lot in the Glen Eagle addition at the end of the cul-de-sac. So pretty much looking for a variance there because the original was denied due to that I don't have, it needs to be behind the house, but my property line is so small that there's really nothing there. There's no way to put anything behind my house other than a couple of lawn chairs. So the existing garage and the new garage that I'm seeking would actually face each other off the existing driveway. You guys have those aerial drawings. You can see where the property or the building is supposed to go on the property. So I was seeking a variance so I could continue or start building there, actually. That's pretty much it.
And I'm trying to find here, what's the size of this building?
Oh, it looks like it's, I think it was 1,980 feet. I believe it's roughly 40, I think that's a 1. I think it's 41 by 30 is what it is.
That's right.
It's what's drawn in here. I can't tell if that's a 1 or a 7, actually.
Drawing I got, Sam. I'm reading 47 by 46.
Okay, 47 by 46. Let me see.
Well, you got a 30-foot and then a 16-foot beyond that.
That is, you're right, there is. That to be added in, so you're correct. 46 and 47.
Okay.
Right. So it looks like your HOA approves, but did you get a chance to look at the protest letters that were submitted?
No, I have not seen any protest letters.
Right. There are a couple of letters in opposition from folks who apparently could not attend the meeting, although they might be on the line. We try to get the... it looks like they're wanting more details of the request.
More details of the plots?
They're just not sure what exactly is being built. So it doesn't look like it's exactly opposing it, at least in this letter. Well, this one does oppose because there's a lack of additional information.
I don't know what more information I could submit other than a drawing and where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I guess I'd have to have some recommendations from you guys on what information I could supply other than how it's going to be built and where it's going to be built.
Sure. Before we see if there are any protesters on the line, board members, did you have any questions or comments of the applicant?
One of the this is Monica Ibarra. One of the letters references another large outbuilding that's already on the property. Can you speak to that at all?
Ma'am, there is no other outbuilding on this property at all. This is all one structure. It's a fairly large home, but there is a very large structure directly behind me that belongs to a Oklahoma City pool builder who built an amazing full-size. It's a house. It's not just a pool house. It's a house, and it comes right up to my backyard, but it's not. There's no structures there.
That may be what this individual is referencing. Thank you.
Well, he actually had to come. He actually came to me to get to sign off on his property. I guess for something similar to this at the time. And it's big.
Thank you, sir.
Sure, Mike.
Oh, and I should have said, do we have Mr. Voorhees back?
Still recused.
This is Mike. I'm back.
Okay. And Mike, did you, I guess, hear the presentation? We're on case number 6 now, item number 6 now?
Yes,
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure you were joining us. Board members, if there are any other questions or comments of this applicant, feel free to ask them. If not, I'll check and see if there are any protesters. Okay. Is there anyone on the line who is wanting to protest item number 6? Okay. Hearing none, I'll get my comments out there. I think it's a peculiar property. I think it's sort of akin to having another house. It's going to be fenced in as well, but sort of akin to having another house on this small parcel that doesn't really offend the intent of the code here. I don't know. I can support this application.
I as well. I definitely see the peculiarity. A little hard getting on board with the hardship, but I think I can support it.
Yeah, I think my element there would just be that there's no room for another external structure given the peculiarity of this piece of land, and he can't fit it in his backyard currently. So that would be a bit of a hardship, arguably.
Okay, I can agree with that. It appears that this lot would have had another house on it unless the applicant would have bought that lot, I would imagine.
No, that lot was actually for another house. I believe the minimum requirements in Glen Eagles are, I believe, they're 2,800 square feet. It might even be larger than that. But that particular lot came with the house, so to speak. And yeah, there is enough room for a home on there, but they just need a garage.
Do we have any further discussion?
If there's no more discussions, we'll take a motion.
I'll move for approval of case number 14735 for the reasons that it meets statutory requirements for variance. Mike Privet.
Mike Voorhees, I'll second.
A motion and a second to approve case number 14735 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a variance. Mrs. McDevitt, if you could call the roll for a vote, please.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And it's approved.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time.
Thanks, sir.
The next item is number 7, case 14737, request of Steve Wilson Masonry Contractors for a variance to the Billboard regulations and the downtown Scenic Highway area regulations at 924 Southwest 6th Street.
I have
You
Mr.
got David Box. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. Well, I appreciate everybody being able to do this via phone and keep our businesses moving in the right direction. So what we have here, I want to make sure everybody's got the exhibit. Not only will you have something that would have been provided in the application, but just for ease of this conversation, I produced an exhibit booklet with 6 pages, all of which have numbers on the bottom right-hand portion, and it starts with what looks to be a as-built site plan. Everybody have that?
Yes.
Okay. So what we are asking for is a variance to the height limitation imposed by the code to this site that is east of Western Avenue and north of Interstate 40. What we've got is a 50-foot maximum height as it relates to non-accessory signs in this area. What I try to do in these sign cases is have a sign study produced before we ever file an application to allow, I think, the visual to show me whether or not I believe we actually have the elements necessary to make the variance application before we file it. So we've done that here, and what you'll see is with the new Interstate 40 and how the Western Avenue Bridge cuts fairly high across the highway there, what you'll see on page 2 is the sign at 90 feet. So what we believe our hardship to be is at the 50 foot, the sign is essentially not visible. You might be able to see a piece of the top, depending on how far back you are. But for the purposes and intent of being able to read the sign, it is not visible. So if you flip through a series of pages, you'll see at both the eastbound and westbound traffic that the sign is visible. What you're seeing here is at the 90 feet we request. And in addition to the the hardship. We've got some unique issues, not only the Western Avenue Bridge, but ODOT in this particular location has installed a different fence type than they typically do. It's that black vinyl, and the way that black vinyl fence hits on the westbound traffic, it serves as almost a sight-proof fence. So you see that you can barely, we're at the very bottom of that fence with our 90 feet. So I think the hardship is that it would prohibit the visibility. In terms of the conditions that are peculiar, I think the Western Avenue Bridge, being at the height that it is, higher than I think what it used to be, as well as that chain link, the vinyl chain link fence, is something that is peculiar. Relief, if granted, would not cause substantial detriment to the public good. As you're aware, as you drive around the city and see these billboards, one of the functions of these billboards is they work with emergency management services for public service announcements, amber alerts, silver alerts, weather advisories, now in this time, the COVID-19 advisories. Well, if you have this at the 50 feet that's allowed under code, that is altogether unreadable. So we think that certainly the public good wouldn't be impacted, but rather granting the variance would be serving the public good. Finally, whether or not the variance, if granted, would be the minimum necessary. I think if you look at these exhibits, I would submit that it is the minimum necessary at that 90 feet, especially if you look at page 5 and page 2. That 90 feet is the absolute shortest that gives you full read of that board. Additionally, all other requirements are met in terms of size, location. It's simply that the height, based upon how that Western Avenue Bridge now hits, creates this hardship, necessitating the variance to the height. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have, and we would ask for your approval. And I will note that the staff, in favorable considerations, does note that the elevation of the highway may somewhat obscure the view of the sign.
So, Mr. Box, Sam Merchant.
Yes, sir.
A question that you probably anticipated from the staff report. It discusses how this site is along the downtown Scenic Highway area, along I-40, and in that area, new billboards are prohibited. And so, I read that as saying that the city doesn't want billboards there, at least not any new billboards at all. And I realize this isn't a new one. This is essentially just making an existing one higher. But consistent with what I see as the intent of that prohibition, I don't see how having an even higher sign is consistent with that. So if you could speak to that, I think we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So this location actually came before the Board of Adjustment years ago in the form of a variance to the prohibition that you're just referring to allow an existing sign to be moved, and as a sign that gets moved, it was considered a new sign and therefore violated that prohibition. I was not involved at the time. The lawyer that did it at the time, I don't think was aware of the height issue that was going to exist with the Western Avenue Bridge, and so they didn't touch on the height of it. They only touched on the location. And so all of that happened at a time in which the prohibition of signs was in place, and yet the Board of Adjustment still saw fit to grant the variance to allow a sign to be built. And then we fast forward, well, now we have a sign that was built, and now Western Avenue Bridge is at a elevation that I don't think was anticipated, and so that sign that was explicitly permitted by the Board of Adjustment to a variance has now become blocked. And so if this was in the first instance, I would understand the point that you're making. I think it's a good point, except for this has been debated. Whether or not a sign was appropriate or not, it was determined that it was. It's just external factors that couldn't have been anticipated or weren't in the control of either the applicant or the council at the time that have now made this sign problematic.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments?
Oh, yeah. I thought I had one. On these PSA things, because there's kind of some kind of set amount of time that the operator's going to run these, or is it just a good faith type of deal?
Well, I mean, typically, hold on 1 second. Let me see if my client is on the line. Give me 1 second.
And who is the billboard operator? I'm not sure it matters a whole lot, but just curious.
It's Whistler.
Which one? Whistler? Okay.
Whistler.
Gotcha.
If you'll permit me 1 moment. I see 3 dots. My client is texting me as we speak.
Yeah, this is Bill Condon with Lamar. I would also like to have an opportunity to speak.
Sure. Mr. Box, maybe we'll just put you on hold.
Sure.
For a bit. Okay. Sir, if you wanted to make your remarks.
Sure. Thank you. Again, this is Bill Condon. I'm with Lamar Advertising. In full disclosure, I'm in the billboard business. We would protest this. Basically, what the applicant is asking is to take a legal, non-conforming sign and remove it and then erect a new sign. I believe the first comment was correct, that the current sign code doesn't allow for it due to the overlay district and the overall height. You're looking at doubling the size from 50 feet to 90 feet. Also, I'd point out that what was adopted in Plan OKC back in 2015, and I quote, restrict new billboards and eliminate or reduce the number of existing billboards, was an excerpt reading from Plan OKC. Also, in regards to the public service messages, I'm sure that Whistler would run public service messages, but to be clear, the full intent here is to sell it to advertisers for a profit. So I think that they're in essence asking for a variance from the existing sign code, and in my opinion, doesn't meet all the statutory requirements, and there could be an argument that it created its own hardship. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Board members, any questions or comments at least to that protest?
Maybe not to that protest, but maybe something similar in the area. If I remember this right, there was a billboard, it may have been Lamar's, that was, the city didn't want them to do it, so they gave them an alternative spot to move their billboard. How is that, different in a situation like this? Would the city consider something like that, to move their location?
So that would have been in a condemnation matter where Lamar would have lost a sign, and then. So look, again, this is David. I'm willing to admit that Lamar is terrified of competition. Mr. Privet can speak to that, as Lamar has become a fixture at planning commissions over the last 2 or 3 months, in which there's probably been 7 or 8 separate applications in which new billboards have been permitted, and Lamar is systematically fighting those, filing lawsuits, trying to get those stopped. They have been unsuccessful. And so this certainly is a variance to the code. This isn't a variance to whether or not a sign is allowed here. This is simply a variance to allow a sign that is legally permittable and there to be visible because of conditions that exist that would not allow the sign to be viewed because of what happened after with the Western Avenue Bridge.
If you want to remain... If what we have always, when working with the city in these situations, it's always been to
Sir, could you just identify yourself so we keep track of who's...
Yeah, I'm sorry. This is Condon with Lamar Advertising again. Working with the city over the years, they've always determined that completely removing a sign and rebuilding a sign constitutes a new sign, and so it would be subject to the existing sign ordinance. So in this case,
And he's just,
Okay, and so that's all the comment we'll have from protestants, and then Mr. Box will let you address that, and then the board will deliberate.
Well,
yeah, so I think this is wrong. I mean, I'll just...
I'm sorry. This is William Hickman. I also wanted to make a comment on this matter.
Okay, I don't have you signed up, sir. Were you speaking in support or opposition?
In opposition.
This is the...
Okay. We'll go ahead, and then we'll let Mr. Box address at the end.
I just want to make sure one matter is before the board. Because this is going to be, and is considered in your staff report, a new sign permit will have to be applied for. Because this is in the downtown Scenic Highway area, this use is not allowed. There was a recent city council conversation about whether or not a use variance could be granted, and I think the agreement of everybody essentially was that no, it could not. And I think that the board needs to be cautious that granting of part of the variance request here, I'm not talking about the height issue, but granting a variance to allow a use, which would be outdoor advertising in the downtown Scenic Highway area, which is prohibited use, would constitute a use variance, which is not allowed by the law. And because this is a new sign permit for a new sign, and while they are presenting it as an existing sign they just want to raise, the sign will be built in a different spot, and I think your staff will confirm, and the staff report confirms, that a new sign permit is required. And as a non-conforming use, your ordinances also in the city do not allow the expansion, the upgrading of non-conforming uses, which is what is essentially happening here, which is also why a new sign, and this has to be considered by this board as a new sign and a new sign permit, and then essentially this is a use variance which is prohibited by law. Thank you.
So this is David again. I want to make sure it's clear that Bill Hickman is the lawyer for Lamar, so this is just Lamar's protest. There's not additional protest.
Doesn't change the law or the facts.
Thank you, Bill. He appears to be changing his position on what the law is. 2 weeks ago, he showed up demanding that a client of mine go to get a variance from the Board of Adjustment. And now he's saying it's not. I would like JJ to weigh in. My understanding is that the variance previously granted runs with the land, and therefore the sign, you're really not giving us a variance for a new sign. The previous variance application granted that. Variances, as you know, run with the land, so I don't believe that to be an issue. I believe the only issue is the height issue. But can I get clarification on that from JJ?
Yes, if the sign's going back in the same location and it was previously granted a variance for that location, then that takes the variance for the location off the table here, and this is strictly a variance to the height of the sign. It's not a non-conforming sign if it has a variance for that location.
Yeah, it's just a legal sign, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Did we have anyone else that has not spoken in protest that wanted to speak in protest? I'll wait for about 10 seconds.
This is William Hickman again. I do just want to make it clear in light of that comment that under paragraph 2 of your staff report summary of application, it says, additionally, this site is located within the downtown Scenic Highway area along I-40, which prohibits these billboards. Although the sign is currently existing, it must be completely removed to increase the height. As a result, it is considered a new sign. And so I'm assuming that part of the request is no longer being sought by the applicant, and that, according to JJ's comments, the board has to be put back in the exact same spot where the variance was, if there was a variance previously granted, where it was granted, and it's not moved on the property.
Okay.
Yeah, and I confirm we are not moving locations. It's on the exact same location. So it is not a non-conforming sign. It is a legal sign pursuant to the variance.
Yeah, and honestly, in the application, we don't have a request that has anything to do with a new sign. And so today, the vote will not be up or down on a new sign. And if that causes problems for the applicant down the line, then they will have to address that down the line. But that's not before us today. The only thing before us today is the height. And so that's what we are concerned with. Mr. Box, did you have any more comments before the board deliberates?
No, that's it. I urge you to look at the sign study. I think the sign study puts it in a visual manner that you can see, even though the number looks big at 90 feet, it will be read above the grade of the roadway in the same manner as it would be if it was 50 feet if we didn't have this massive Western Avenue bridge issue.
Okay.
About how far is the next closest billboard along I-40 on that corridor? Anybody know?
I don't have that information up in front of me.
I don't.
Mr. Box, this is Monica. I had a question about the height. The photos that you've provided us show what it is at 90, and it's clearly fully visible at 90. Is there any amount less than that that would still allow for visibility but not be almost double what the allowance is?
So that's a great question. So if you turn to page 2 of that little packet that I put together, so you can see there at 90, it's just fully visible at that 90. I mean, maybe a couple feet, but because of that bridge, it's blocked once we drop below 90. Understanding that there's, the number looks big. And I had a similar case for Love out at I-40, and I think it's Choctaw Road, and there it was like 110 feet. And there we had some bridges and other things and so I know it's very difficult, especially when we're here like on the phone, but the number seems big, but if you look at those exhibits, there's really nothing less than 90 that gets us the visibility for the sign.
Oh, and also looking at these pictures, was that not maybe the intent of those fences and being blacked out so you couldn't see what's over there?
No, I think you give ODOT too much credit. So that's just a new fence prototype that ODOT has gone to.
Okay. Board members, any other questions or comments to the applicant before we deliberate? Okay. Cindy, if you could mute all the other phones other than the board members. I'll begin my comments. I keep going back to my prior point that I started with, which is just I don't think that the city really wants signs in this area, and that is evidenced by the prohibition against new signs. You can certainly come in and try to get a variance for that and get a new sign, but still I think that would still be the exception to the rule, that the city doesn't want new signs here. And consistent with that, I certainly don't think the city wants even bigger signs, or at least even taller signs. And I'm very concerned about this very quickly developing area. If we grant this request, I don't think that this sign is intended to be in this quickly developing area. And if we allow this sign in this area, there's nothing then that would stop another sign from going up at also 90 feet, or on the other side of the highway, 110 feet under the same logic. And so for those reasons, I can't support the application, but I am only one member of the board, and I welcome other comments from board members.
My feelings on this are pretty much the same on all billboards next to the highway. The only thing that concerns me is the downtown Scenic highway area, and just kind of curious what that area is, and does it go all the way across downtown? Or?
It follows the alignment, the new alignment of the new I-40.
Okay. So from where it splits off to the Broadway on the west side and
to Villa.
Villa, okay.
Yeah.
And I think, Mr. Privet, I agree with your earlier comment that screening on looks like the north side of I-40 there, I think the intent might not have been to obscure signs specifically, but I think it was to obscure generally whatever's over there, whether it be a billboard or the dilapidated building or whatever it is. So I do think the idea was to focus drivers' attention not on those side streets, but on the highway and keep that looking clean. So, and I think that this variance would be contrary to that intent as well. So I can't support it, but I can be outvoted. Are there any other comments or a motion?
This might freeze just so we can move it on and vote. I will move we approve the variance.
I'll second. Mike?
A motion and a second to approve the variance in case number, on the right one, 14737 for the reason that meets the statutory conditions for a variance. If Ms. McDevitt will call the vote.
Mr. Merchant?
Nay.
Mr. Privet?
Nay.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Nay.
And it's denied.
Well, we would need a separate motion for denial.
Okay.
This time I move we deny. Mike Voorhees.
Privet, second.
Okay, Ms. McDevitt?
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Nay.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And now it's denied. And JJ, if you'll call the next matter.
Item 8, case 14793, request of Amaroke LLC for a variance to fencing and wall regulations in the Scenic River Overlay District at 1342 Southwest 3rd Street. And this application and the one, these number 9, are related. They were both recommended for approval today by the Riverfront Design Committee.
Okay. Is the applicant on the line?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. This is Michael Pate. I'm with Amarok Perimeter Security Systems. We basically made this application for the business here to secure the property. They've been suffering some break-ins. It's in the overlay district, so we had to go in front of the overlay district first before we got to you. I don't know if this is a new group or not from the last time I was in Oklahoma City, so I'm going to go ahead and do a little tutorial on exactly what we do and how it operates, if that's okay with everybody.
I think Mr. Privet and I were probably on the board for the last one of these.
Okay.
I can't speak for the rest of them. Sure, go ahead. Oh, before you start, what's the difference between the two applications? It's just two different addresses that are adjacent, or what's?
Two separate pieces of property. Had to go through two separate applications. Yes, sir.
Okay. And are they next to each other?
I'm not sure. I have two separate maps here, and they're overhead shots, but I do not think they are. It's 1342 Southwest 3rd and 3300 West Reno.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah,
I think they're across the street or something like that. Are they across the street from each other?
Excuse me, this is Charlie Thomason, Maxwell Supply Company, 3300 West Reno.
Okay.
I just letting you know, I guess we're tied together with the other property that Michael's doing this on our behalf, and if there's any questions about 3300 West Reno, I'd be happy to answer them or go into anything. I don't know anything about the other property. I think it's two separate projects.
Okay, they just happen to kind of be going on at the same time. Look, they don't look adjacent.
I know exactly where he's talking about now. Reno. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. Okay. I just was wondering if maybe we could combine the presentations, but if you wanted to go ahead and present in the first case, we will hear that, Mr. Pate.
Okay. Thank you. Basically what we're doing here is trying to secure the property. There's already an existing fence line up. We install the electric guard dog, which is our primary product, behind the existing fence. Basically, it's an alarm operated with a 12-volt battery. So we take a 12-volt battery and we amplify the 12 volts with an energizer to between 7 and 9,000 volts. That takes 1.3 seconds for that to happen. So for 1.3 seconds, there's no energy on the interior line. Once that energizer is loaded, mechanically it can no longer hold any more energy, so it releases the energy down the line back to the alarm panel. And the alarm panel is looking for a nice clean return, and in our world, a nice clean return is 2,000 volts or more. If it's less than 2,000 volts, the alarm starts a countdown. If we get 5 consecutive negative returns, which is about 7 seconds, we set the alarm off audibly on the site and silently back to our call center, and we go through a call list. So whoever's number one on my call list, let's say it's the chairman, I'm going to call the chairman at 2:30 in the morning and tell him where the break is. We can measure the breaks down to about 10 feet. We also incorporate cameras with these devices. So at 2:30 in the morning, you don't have to actually get in your car and go down to the site. You can sit in front of your computer with your Wi-Fi up and running, draw up that fence line and look at it and go, hey, we had a big thunderstorm in Oklahoma City, took out that big oak tree on the corner, dropped right on top of the fence line. That's why the alarm's going. Let's shut it down and take care of all this in the morning. Or I got 5 guys in a flatbed truck, cut a hole in my fence. They're robbing me blind. Please call the local police department. That's called a verified alarm. The police love verified alarms because they know it's an actual crime being committed and probably exactly where it is and how many people they're going to engage when they get there. So that's what we do. We operate under the International Electric Technical Commission standards, 60335-2-76. We've got, pretty close to 30 installations all over Oklahoma City securing properties, and we've also been in this overlay district before to do this. So that's what we do, and that's how it operates. And if anyone has any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Board members, any questions or comments?
Not for me. Some things pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think we beat you up a little bit on the last one, and that made things more clear on this one. And so I can get on board with this. I believe for the last one, we might have entertained the idea of doing this for only a period of time, just in case this area develops over the next decade, since the variance does carry with the land. Would you be open to that, or would you want, how long has this business been there? Are they looking for something that's going to last forever, or is 10 or 15 years acceptable?
A timeline that long is fine. When the property, if it ever gets redeveloped, and I'm sure that's the intent of the city with the city's plan for that to happen, it's going to be developed in such a manner that this kind of security is no longer applicable to that particular type of business. These are just really the types of businesses that we secure. Once there's a redevelopment down there, it's you start going into multi-use zoning types with attached residences above, retail, things like that. It's just not an applicable application, and we just wouldn't be there anymore. It's just this particular type of business that has large amounts of inventory that are stored outdoors that invites crime, and that's basically what we're protecting here.
Okay. I agree with that. Board members, any questions or comments or a motion? Well, I guess I'll wait and see. Was any protestants on the line? Okay. Hearing none, if there are no questions or comments, board members will take a motion.
Mike Voorhees, I move we approve.
Privet, second.
Okay. And we'll take these separately. Ms. McDevitt, if you could call the vote, please.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And it's approved. JJ, we'll go ahead and call number 9 and have a quick discussion.
Item 9, case number 14740, requested the same applicant for fence and wall regulations in the SRODD at 3300 West Reno Avenue.
And Mr. Payne, did you want to just incorporate your comments from the prior application?
Yes, sir, that'll be fine unless anyone has any other questions. It's basically a duplicate.
Okay. It seems the same to me, and I don't see any different considerations that were immediately apparent to me. So I don't have any questions. Board members, any questions or comments?
No, we don't have any protests on this one either, do we?
I don't have anyone signed up. Is there anyone online who wanted to protest this application?
I do not want to protest, obviously. I'm Charlie Thomason with Maxwell Supply Company, the applicant. I just want to reiterate everything he said on the last project that's well down the street from us, and let you guys know that I spoke with BOK, next door neighbor of ours, and they were pleased with this opportunity for us to fortify one of their fences, and to let you know that we've installed this product around our 5-acre facility in the Tulsa market, and crime went to 0 when we got it up and turned it on. So if this follows through like the last one, I look forward to our crime being 0, and I thank you for your consideration.
Okay. Thank you, sir. In an ideal world, your crime would be 0 without an electrified fence needed, but given that we don't have that, I could support the application. Board members, any questions, comments, or a motion?
I just had a question. Sam, you mentioned a 10 to 15 year period on these. Was the first one approved with that? I'm sorry, I may have missed that piece of the motion.
It was not. I agree with the applicant's comments with the last application that the way that this area is developing, I don't think we're going to have to worry about it developing for any use that would, a future use that might want to put up an electrified fence. I think the applicant's right.
Totally. I just wasn't sure if we had mentioned that in the first one or not.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I'm satisfied not putting a temporal limitation on it. There are some areas where I would want that, but I think that the applicant's right. In this area, it'll get developed into something totally different that wouldn't even want that in the future.
Yeah, and if they do want it, it's most likely because they need it.
True. It sounds like a motion.
Sure, I'll make a motion. Motion to approve case number, number 9. 14740 for the reasons that it meets statutory requirements for variance.
Mike Corey, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the application in case number 14740 for the reason that it meets statutory conditions for a variance. Mr. McDevitt, could you take our vote, please?
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And the application is approved.
Thank you very much. We appreciate y'all doing this online like this. It's really helpful. And can't wait till you're all back in fine form over there when we come visit you in Oklahoma City.
Absolutely. Look forward to it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
Okay, JJ.
Okay. Item 10, case 14734, request for special exception of Susan Butterfield to allow lodging accommodations at home sharing at 5811 North Villa Avenue.
The applicant on the line.
Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. This is Ms.
Hello?
Butterfield?
Yes.
Sure. If you wanted to state your name and address for the record and then present your application.
Yes. My name is Susan Butterfield, and the address I live at, or the address in question?
It's your residence.
My residence is 9016 Northwest 85th Street in Yukon. The residence in question is 5811 North Villa Avenue. I would like to propose home sharing, and I do not live in the residence.
Okay. Could you just give us some details about the proposed home sharing?
Yes. The house is a 3-bedroom house. It's got a 2-car garage and 2-car driveway. It's located on Villa Avenue, and I bought the house and remodeled it, and I've had it for sale for over a year. So I have decided to try to do the home sharing, the Airbnb website, to try to at least pay for the expenses of having the house, owning the house without it selling. And I had a teacher that was willing to rent it as soon as I got it zoned, but now she doesn't need it because there's no school.
Oh. Well, and I've heard about Airbnbs struggling given the current climate as well. But
I'm sure that it will right now, but hopefully in the future, when this all passes, I will be able to rent it out occasionally for temporary housing for people, so that I can pay the utilities and insurance and taxes on it.
Sure. Okay. Will renters be able to park in the? I think the application says they'll be able to park in the garage.
Yes, they can park in the garage, and they can also park in the driveway.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments?
This is Mike Voorhees. We didn't have any protests on this one, but
there was a protest letter. I believe that. And Ms. Butterfield, did you have a chance to read the protest letter?
I never saw a protest letter.
Okay, there's been one submitted and it's included in our board packet and available online if you need to see it. But generally, the concern is additional traffic, vetting potential renters, communications about, basically it's communications to the renter about the school across the street. And then also, in general, an objection that we hear a lot in these cases, how it's not really consistent with the neighborhood atmosphere because you're having short-term rentals. And so if you wanted to address any of those concerns, we'd be happy to hear it.
Well, as far as the traffic goes, it's already on a busy street. It's on Villa Avenue. There is a school across the street, which also causes traffic. As far as the neighborhood, I doubt seriously people would even know if someone was living there or renting there. There's some pretty strict rules on the Airbnb website and you can actually review the person that's going to rent it as well as them reviewing the person that's renting it out. So I don't intend to, there's lots of strict rules, and I don't intend to rent to anybody that doesn't meet the requirements in the reviews.
Okay. Board members, any questions? Okay. I think I don't have any objections with this application. I don't, particularly given it looks like there's plenty of parking. It doesn't look like the use as a short-term rental would be anything in addition to something that the driving or the parking or anything, the traffic would be more than its typical use as a rental property or a home. And so, I mean, for these reasons, I think I can support the application. I think one question for me would be the amount of time that you might want to place on it. And I think, given that there's a school across the street, maybe a period of 2 years, just to make sure that there aren't any issues that are unexpected related to that school. I could get on board for around 2 years, but I could be convinced shorter or longer, I think.
So I would have to come back and do this all over again in 2 years since the house isn't sold?
Yes, and my understanding is you would need a permit from the city every year,
yes.
And then a
Yes.
or a special exception from us, however long if we grant it for a period of time, however long that is.
Maybe it'll be sold in 2 years and I won't have to worry about it.
I will say for these, we generally are not
involved.
Sure. We generally do not grant these for too long. It's up to 10 years, and I don't recall ever granting one for 10 years. So we usually keep it to a shorter period of time.
Okay.
Board members, any questions, comments, or a motion?
This is Mike Voorhees. I move approval 2 years.
Privet, second.
Second.
Okay. I heard Mr. Privet first for the second, but we have a motion and a second to approve the application in case number 14734 for the reason it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception. Ms. McDevitt, if you could take the vote, please.
Sure. Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And it's approved.
Yay. Does that mean I can hang up now?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. JJ, I
You
think
say
we're
yes,
on
I can
four.
hang.
Oh, yes. We are finished with that application and moving on to item number 14.
Item 14, case 14711, request for special exception and variance to allow home sharing in the HP district at 529 Northwest 22nd Street.
Is the applicant on the line?
Hi, my name is Ayala de Leon, and I live in a 529 Northwest 22nd Street. I want to put my house on share home.
Okay. Could you give us some details about this house? It looks like 2 bedrooms that you're wanting to rent.
Yes, it's 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, and yes, I want to rent the house. Short times when I have kids, so I want to plan when they have soccer games of the city. Not all the time because it's my main house, so probably when we are on vacation.
Okay. And can you discuss the parking situation?
The house, yes, the house has a garage facing to the Dewey Street. We park there. Also, we park on the 2nd Street, 22nd Street, facing to the house.
So there's some on-street parking and some parking in. I guess how much parking? How many cars can?
2.
Okay.
For 2.
And that's off-street, and then there's still on-street parking.
Mhm.
Okay. And I assume you're aware that the Historic Preservation Commission recommended denial of this application.
Yes.
Did you want to speak to that at all?
Well, I want to say that it's my main house. I will be aware all the time because it's my main house. Like I said, I will rent it just for weekends, not all the time. Once when my kids is on vacation or we have a game, so I don't think it will be a big problem. Also, my laundry is next door.
Who is that you said was next door?
Chris Lauer, who rent the house for me.
Okay, so he will manage the house while you're not there. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Because the Big Truck Tacos, the house is behind Big Truck Tacos restaurant, so they will be aware of that too.
Okay. Board members, any questions or comments?
Are you the owner of this property?
I'm renting the house from Chris Lauer, and that is my main house.
I don't have anyone signed up to speak in protest, but there was a protest letter.
Yes.
Did you want to address that letter at all?
I have kids, so I heard that lady before me, the Airbnb reviewed the host and the guests, so I don't think it will be a deal because I'm planning to rent my house on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, not even during school days, I'm sorry.
That you're aware that if we grant the variance and the special exception, that I think the concern is that there's nothing that would bind you to only renting on weekends. And so I think some of the concern would be that you, down the line, might want to rent it out every day of the week, which would change the application substantially.
Okay.
Does that make sense? I mean, right now you're saying it would just be on the weekends, but if you end up making a lot of money on the weekends, you might think, well, I'm just going to do this all the time, which changes.
No, because where I will live, I cannot do that. I talked with one of the ladies on the phone and I explained them, I cannot leave my house alone. Where I will live, that is my main house, my kids' house. So our plan is when we have vacations, we can make some money, but we're not all the time. No, we cannot do that. No.
Okay. Is there anyone on the line that wanted to speak on this matter that's not the applicant?
This is Mike Voorhees. I've got a question.
Okay.
Does she have a letter from the owner authorizing her to make this application? I'm a little bit confused. Can a tenant bind a landlord to these types of rentals and apply for a special exception?
I believe they can. I will let Ms. McDevitt speak on that, but I believe they can.
Sure. As part of her application, she would have been required to submit a letter of authorization from the property owner.
Okay. Well, if that's in the application, I can assume then they know what's going on.
I will say for the board, I think this will be the first one in HP that we granted both the special exception and the variance. Yeah. Usually it's just the special exception, but not the variance to the owner occupied requirement. And so I think that doesn't particularly trouble me on this one just because of the location. Right on 23rd Street, right next to Big Truck Tacos. I think that to me is a little bit different than a house that's just in the middle of Mesta Park or something like that. Those are my initial thoughts. I know HP initially requested or recommended denial, but I watched that proceeding and they did it without comment, and I think it was just because it was not owner occupied, and so they just recommended denial for that reason alone, without much analysis. So, without more from them on that, given that this is on 23rd, it's an extremely close call for me, but just the location for me makes this unique, being right on 23rd Street. And if this were nestled inside, Harris Hills or Mesta Park or something, it might change the analysis for me a little bit. But those are my initial comments.
So, I don't know what to say. So, you will deny it or?
No. I'm just getting my comments on the record. Just to have it on the record, and also I welcome any other comments from any other board members. I would want this for a very short period of time, maybe a year, but that's kind of where I am right now.
How long is your rental agreement at that address?
I have that agreement with me.
Is it actually owned by Big Truck Tacos?
Yes.
Okay.
Chris Lauer is,
It's directly
I think we put
adjacent
it
to it.
for year. We have to renew every year.
Okay, so yeah, we can go for a year. How much is left on your lease currently?
My lease is 1,000.
No, not cost. I mean, length.
What again?
Are you 2 months in, 6 months in?
Oh, okay.
Currently.
7 months.
Okay, so
And the house 7 months.
and you plan on signing another year lease, I assume.
I'm planning to stay there a few years because my kids attend Wilson at the school, and that is the greatest school I found it.
Okay, good. I can easily support 1 year on this as well.
So what happened after 1 year? I have to apply again, or?
Yes. So you get a permit from the city and also come in and get, unless the city council changes the code, you would get a permit and get another special exception and a variance from us. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it'll be for a year in the future. I think for these, we're just doing a shorter amount of time just to make sure that there are no issues and just to see how it goes. And then we might do it for another year. We might do it for a longer period of time. It just depends on that next application.
Okay.
That's generally the process.
And when that year will start, because since we have all this lighters, so I would like to know when.
Yeah, you'll get an order from the board based on whether this application is approved or denied. And Ms. McDevitt or JJ can correct me, but I think from the date of that order, you'd be able to rent the property.
Yeah, it'd be once the appeal period has expired, so from 10 days after today.
10 days after they open, it starts, because she's worried about it.
And then the license would issue, and then she'd be able to begin home sharing. Sorry, this is Laura.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I did not catch that. So I will have 1 year from 10 days.
Approximately.
Roughly.
So we'd have to vote on this, have an order from the board, and then there's an appeal period for 10 days. Anyone can appeal that's an interested party. And after that appeal period, that's when you could get your permit from the city, and then you could start renting at that point. So I would probably plan for around 2 weeks. But that also assumes that the board's going to approve your application, which we haven't done yet. So board members,
yes, I'm only worried about how far of the COVID-19 will go, because Airbnb is canceling all the reservations. So I'm worried because I will have short time, you know.
Yeah.
I don't want to do anything until the economy and everything's come back. I will not risk myself and my home.
I understand. I mean, that's kind of out of our control. All we can do is vote on what's before us. If you don't plan on renting out the property anytime soon, I guess one thing you could do is continue your application for a couple of months so that you don't have a ruling from the board. But with that, you would not be able to rent to anyone until your application is approved. But the board wouldn't act on your application until you had the motion or had your application heard.
Okay.
So you could do that. You can have us vote on it today, or you could continue it.
We don't have any way to put the exception into effect at a later date, do we?
And I can't think of any way that we can. Laura might know.
Not that I can think of. I don't know if JJ or Cindy have any thoughts.
Just grant it for a longer period of time would be the only.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I'd I'd be up for 2 years max, but still.
This might vary. My biggest concern on this one was the variance, and I don't have a problem voting yes to approve the variance, but I'm thinking very short period of time. So let me take a stab at this and see if anybody wants to second it. I'm going to move we approve both the variance and the special exception limited to 14 months.
I will say that the license period, so then she'd have, the licenses are all for 1 year. So then theoretically, if she wanted to come and apply for her license within the next month or two, then she'd be able to do it. But I don't want the special exception and the license to be running on different terms.
Okay, let me withdraw that motion and try it again. I move we approve both the variance and the special exception for 1 year.
Second.
Monica Ibarra, I second that. Oh, okay.
Approve it, sorry.
Okay. I have a motion and a second to approve the application in case number 14711 for a period of 1 year for the reasons to meet the statutory conditions for a special exception and a variance. If Ms. McDevitt could take the vote.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
And it's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And JJ, I think the last item?
The last item, item 15, case 14724, special exception to allow lodging accommodations, home sharing in the R1 district at 4805 Northwest 30th Street.
The applicant present?
Hello?
Hello, if you just wanted to introduce yourself with your address and present your application.
Yes, this is Jan Green. My husband and I live at 4808 Northwest 30th. The house that we're asking for the exception for is at 4805 Northwest 30th, directly across the street from us. I had a sheet that I was going to bring when we were going to come to the meeting, and I don't know if you got a copy of it or not, listing all the things of why we should get to do this. So I'll just read it to you. We're responsible homeowners. We've lived in the neighborhood since 1985, and we are very concerned with keeping our neighborhood nice. And to us, nice means not too many vehicles around and well-maintained lawns and surroundings. We want to keep the area as nice as it's been through the years. The lawn has been and will continue to be professionally maintained. The cleaning of the property between short-term renters will be done by a cleaning service. Our yard at 4808 Northwest 30th has been awarded Yard of the Month by the Windsor Hills Neighborhood Association, and we've been members of that since its inception. We live across the street, as I said, and we'll be able to easily monitor and not allow any activity that would be disturbing. And that information you put in your thing for the short-term rental, you put no parties allowed, and then if they don't follow the rules, then they can be asked to leave or stop. I really feel like the rentals they won't be full-time, and they won't be for a long time, it looks like. So there's going to be less cars and traffic in the area. I'm not planning to rent to more than 6 people. It's a 3-bedroom house. We will comply and are trying to comply with any city ordinance that relates to the short-term rentals. We've got the fire alarms, the smoke detectors, the carbon monoxide detector, the fire extinguisher, the driveway there will be plenty of parking. I don't think it will be a problem for the neighborhood. In fact, I think it will be better than having a rental property where you can't control the number of cars and the amount of people that are living there. And if you have any questions, we'll be glad to try and answer. Oh, I have a couple of letters from neighbors, if you'd like to hear those, that are in favor of what we're doing. Would you like to hear those, or?
I think I'm okay. I'm good on that. I don't know if the rest of the board does, but
if you want me to read some more letters, I can. I've got a couple neighbors that wrote letters. They like the idea. They also think it'll cut down on traffic, and I will be able to maintain the yard and keep it looking the way I like for it to look, and it just seems like a good idea to me.
Okay. Board members, any questions of the applicant?
None for me.
Questions was? Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hearing none, is there anyone on the line that was, I don't have anyone signed up to protest. Was there anyone on the line that wanted to protest this application? Okay. Hearing none, there are a couple of protest letters.
I saw them. I saw the letters.
My reading of these letters is consistent with some that we hear in other cases. Just generally neighbors that don't want home sharing at all in their neighborhoods. And, unfortunately for those protesters, the city council provided for a way for people to have home sharing when the city council could have prohibited it. And so while we analyze and scrutinize each application, I don't think there's a wholesale prohibition against home sharing. And so the objections that I see that just want to prevent home sharing, I don't think that those are defeating of an application from my perspective. So I can still support this application. I think it can meet all the conditions. I think maybe a period of 2 years in this area is appropriate just to see how it works in this area.
Well, I'd like to not have to do it again in 2 years since I'm old.
That's your hardship.
That's my hardship. Yeah, I'm old. But I really think it's going to work out, and I don't think the neighbors are going to even know that it's happening. I mean, I think it's not going to. I don't think it's going to detract from the neighborhood at all. If it does, believe me, I won't even do it.
Yeah, and it's not just your application. There are a couple of considerations for our purposes, including, the city council deliberated over this for a long time, and it was very contentious, and they could change it at any time.
I read the newspaper article.
Sure. We generally, as you probably heard for other applications, we generally don't grant these for very long periods just because we want to see. It's so new and we want to see how everything shakes out. I can get on board with 2 to 3 years. I don't know where the rest of the board is on this, but I'm only one member.
I'd go for 10, but 3 is fine.
She convinced you at the.
By then I'll be in the nursing home.
Yeah, she convinced you at the age hardship. We're going to have just a bunch of older applicants now to convince Mr. Privet on all applications. Do we have any more questions, comments, or a motion?
I'll move approval for 2 years.
Privet 3.
Mike, can you borrow it? Go ahead, Mike.
Let me withdraw my motion and try it again. Mike Voorhees, I move approval for 3 years.
Privet will second that.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve case number 14724 for the reason that it meets the statutory conditions for a special exception. If Ms. McDevitt can take the vote, please.
Mr. Merchant?
Aye.
Mr. Privet?
Aye.
Mr. Voorhees?
Aye.
Ms. Ibarra?
Aye.
I'll note for the record the motion was for 3 years. Right. And it is approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Is there anyone on the line that intended to be heard on the matter and was not heard? Okay, we'll move on. Additional items, I see none. Communications and reports, I see none. Citizens to be heard. I'll wait for about 10 seconds. Any citizens to be heard? Hearing none. No other business. We are adjourned.